Hey, what is happening, guys? How are you all doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and today is yet another obligatory Nintendo Direct discussion. So quickly before I jump into the topic, I do want to remind you that I am currently pushing to pass 15,000 subscribers. I am creeping up on it. I'm about 1,000 away. It's very exciting, and so as you watch this video, if you like it and if you seem to like what I'm doing, then maybe consider subscribing to the channel, because I make several videos a week talking all things Nintendo, video games, Metroid, all that good stuff. Now, like I said, we are talking about a Nintendo Direct today, and it's for a few reasons. Obviously, beyond just the fact that typically Nintendo Direct videos are kind of easy views. That actually has nothing to do with why I'm making this video. There's actually reason to believe that a Nintendo Direct is probably going to be happening sometime soon, very likely next week. There is a lot of conversation and scuttlebutt on the internet. There are people in the know who've been talking about it for a while, and everything seems to be pointing towards next week. I, of course, even know some of these individuals who've been discussing the fact that, hey, there's some big stuff coming very soon post Nintendo Direct Indie World Showcase, and so let's all be paying attention. Obviously, the Indie World Showcase that happened on Tuesday this week is a huge factor in all of this. A lot of us have been pointing to the fact that in prior situations, the Indie World Showcases a lot of times are followed by a Nintendo Direct of some kind soon after. In fact, it even happened this year. As hard as it probably is for a lot of us to think back to how things were happening earlier in the year when the pandemic was just starting to hit and change our lives and also change the video game industry, there was an Indie World Showcase, and then not far after was the big March Nintendo Direct Mini that happened. And that was just the most recent example where these two seem to come almost packaged together in a way. And so does that mean a regular Nintendo Direct or some sort of larger presentation from Nintendo of any kind is coming towards us soon? I'm definitely leaning towards believing that yes, something is probably going to be happening very soon, probably next week. A lot of you might remember that about 2 weeks ago I even made a video discussing Nintendo's potential future for the rest of the year, and that I was fairly optimistic that they still have a plan. And this was mostly in response to the partner presentation, you know, the 8-minute little Nintendo Direct thing that they did that most of us did not like. And I was like, you know, this happened in such a way, and it was so bad in such a way, that something tells me it was purposefully done to get some of this stuff out of the way, to maybe meet some contractual obligations from some of these developers, and that Nintendo has a plan for some bigger, more exciting stuff later in the year. I then discussed, soon after that, how August makes sense to me. This was just my own personal speculation at that time. How August makes sense to me to be probably the last opportunity Nintendo would have to show us some kind of Nintendo Direct, or at least some major big announcements for games that would release in 2020. Now, I've always been open to the fact that a Nintendo Direct or a big announcement could happen after the month of August, in September, October, or November, but most likely be for big games or announcements of stuff happening in 2021. I'm talking about trying to show us stuff that might be releasing in 2020 before this crazy year is over. I feel like August, this current month we're in right now, is the time to make that happen. And then we now come to today. We've had this new Indie World Showcase, and there are other people like VentureBeat's Jeff Grubb, or my buddy Nate from Direct Feed Games, and plenty of other people and places on the internet talking about, hey, get ready, this is just, you know, the first stop on the August train of hype for Nintendo, or however the phrasings have been getting out there, basically hinting at, yeah, something is probably coming, probably a Nintendo Direct, and most likely next week. Now, of course, I have to remind you guys here before anything is officially confirmed that maybe this stuff doesn't happen, right? There's a chance that none of this stuff is real, or it's not Nintendo's plan, or August isn't the time. All of these things, you know, I had my own personal theories that August was the time. Now there are definitely things being said and being heard around that make it really seem like August is the time and next week might be when it would happen. But I do have to remind you guys, you know, we can be hopeful to a degree, but we can't expect it like it's fact, because nothing is fact until Nintendo or any company makes it a fact. And so if something doesn't happen, even though I am expecting something to happen, if it doesn't, we can't really get too mad, right? Okay, this is just stuff that's being thrown out there. We have to hear the caveats that nothing is real yet, and we have to just wait and see how it plays out. Of course, could this turn out to be something that isn't a Nintendo Direct? And yes, that is also possible. I mean, going back to earlier in the year, in fact, a lot of this information originally coming from Jeff Grubb himself, there were discussions that Nintendo was planning a big Mario-focused celebration at E3, where they would announce the Mario remasters that we've been waiting for and talking about all freaking year. Are these things even real or not? Nintendo, what's going on? And that was the big story, you know, around March or April, that in June, when E3 was going to happen, Nintendo was going to announce these through a Mario-focused celebration or some kind of panel or something, because this is the 35th anniversary of Mario, and so it's a great time to re-release these Mario games, hopefully in a remastered fashion. Let's have a big presentation and celebrate all things Mario and give some new game announcements and all that stuff. And so do they maybe take that same idea, if that was even real in the first place, and move that to August, to next week? Instead of a Nintendo Direct, are they going to give us like a Mario presentation? I certainly think that could be possible. It's not really what I'm putting my money on. At this point, if the Mario remasters are real, I would think that they would probably show up in something more like a Nintendo Direct presentation, or some sort of different Nintendo Direct truncated thing like what they tried to do with the partner presentation showcase, but maybe do it with first-party games and make it more exciting and better than that was, and maybe within that, they would also heavily feature these Mario remasters. I don't know. I just basically don't know if I see a Mario-themed announcement event thing happening next week or this month, but I do think it's not crazy to maybe expect those games to get announced this month in some way, shape, or form. The other thing that we might want to also consider is that they're not necessarily doing a full Direct. They're not maybe necessarily going to do a Mario-focused event. What if they just have one huge, massive announcement to reveal in August, something that is so big and exciting that it basically would feel worthy of taking the place of a Nintendo Direct, right? And to me, that could only be one of two things. One would be, okay, Metroid Prime 4, which, let's be real, it's just not going to be that, you guys. It's not going to be Metroid Prime 4. If it was, I think that would be big enough news and make enough of a splash to totally cover the rest of 2020. I don't even care what else you're doing, Nintendo. You showed us Metroid Prime 4, you gave us a date, you know, whatever you would do, and that would be their big August drop, and that would shake the industry and the internet enough to cover this kind of rumor of a big announcement coming next week. But since we know it's not going to be Metroid Prime 4, the only other thing I think it could be would be information, of course, on Zelda Breath of the Wild 2. And this is where it could be anything from a brand new trailer with gameplay, confirmation of details, to an official name of the game, to, of course, a date, or even a release window for the game. And the biggest news that could come out of that would be if they somehow wanted to confirm that that game was going to release next year. How long, all year, have we been talking about the idea of Breath of the Wild 2 being Nintendo's big release answer to new consoles from Sony and Microsoft, right? Something to help keep the Switch and Nintendo in the conversation throughout the release of new generation machines from their competitors. I mean, I've talked about it all year, right? You've heard me and plenty of other people. We've all been theorizing it. I'm not the only one, but I have consistently discussed it throughout the year. And I think it could make sense. I could see a situation where maybe they were like, Breath of the Wild 2 releases, you know, mid-November 2020, and here you go, and here's the title. And it would be huge news. We would also be satisfied with no Nintendo Direct next week if instead we got information on Breath of the Wild 2, and even more if they confirmed it to be a 2020 release. I think it's like the slightest bit of possible. I mean, like, less than 10% chance that actually happens. But I do think that seeing the game could be something that we see. I just don't expect it to be a sudden 2020 release. But really, at the end of the day, you guys, a regular Nintendo Direct just makes the most sense. I can't imagine Nintendo would not have enough stuff in the back half of the year to throw into a Nintendo Direct, even in the 2020 pandemic year, right? With the slow releases, Pikmin 3 coming out October 30th. I just feel like there's got to be enough stuff to warrant like a nice 20-minute Nintendo Direct. Talk about Bayonetta 3, Nintendo. Talk about No More Heroes 3. show us the date for Bravely Default 2, what's happening with Doom Eternal, talk about Breath of the Wild 2, maybe give an update on Metroid Prime 4. I mean, I don't expect that, but that's a thing you could do. Or on the Metroid front, as I've been saying all year, I think that some other Metroid game probably was planned for 2020, and now I don't know if it's maybe shifted around, but even if it has shifted around, an August Direct next week could be a great time to discuss it. Is there a new 2D game coming like I've been thinking? Now's the time to talk about it. The Prime Trilogy we've been waiting for? Let's talk about it. An HD port of Samus Returns from the 3DS? Let's talk about it, Nintendo. Like, if anything else is happening in the Metroid world, it would be huge news regardless if they talked about something like this. You know, and then if there's some kind of other new Nintendo game we don't know about, a Pikmin 4, an F-Zero, a Kid Icarus, anything like that, I think that this could be the time. So, if I think about what makes the most sense, sure, a Zelda Breath of the Wild info drop would be great, Metroid Prime 4 would be the best thing ever, but that's just not going to happen. The Mario thing, maybe, but really, a Nintendo Direct makes the most sense to me. It would get the most hype, people would be so excited, and if they had a couple of great things in it, Nintendo fans are going to feel pretty happy and satisfied given the weirdness and slowness and awkwardness of 2020. So, given everything that I've heard and that's being thrown around right now, personally, my money is on a Direct. So this is just fun speculation for now, and you've heard my thoughts and opinions and my excitement coming off of the Indie World Showcase for the fact that we might be getting something big from Nintendo next week, or at least before the month of August is over, to be fair. Something this month, like I theorized, honestly, about 2 weeks ago. So right now, things seem to be potentially shaping up to be very exciting. What do you guys think about my predictions and theories and discussions? What are your own theories and discussions? What do you think could be happening? Do you believe the conversations happening right now? Do you not believe them? And yeah, discuss your thoughts below. And with that, this video is a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I'll catch you next time on another video.